Those reflections are interesting. It's important now to consider whether the experience of the protocol to date translates into the negotiations and the positions being adopted by the United States, China, and the EU in particular.
Well, I think the biggest way that it's playing out is that we saw in the Copenhagen climate negotiations in 2008 or December 2009, was it? That what the EU tried to do was essentially have a Kyoto 2, so to impose top-down legally binding countries, but this time to include all parties, India, China, and everybody, not just the developed country parties. And effectively, the Copenhagen Climate Conference was, a catastrophe. And the EU was completely peripheralized in negotiations, which effectively, the Copenhagen Accord came out of a sort of a side meeting between President Obama and the Chinese and the Indian authorities and Brazil and Russia, whereas the EU was kind of peripheralized in the negotiations. But what happened, Copenhagen, in retrospect, was a necessary transition to a new kind of global agreement, and we're in now a bottom-up world where the primary building block of our international treaty in Paris is going to be what's called INDCs, intended nationally determined commitments, and INDCs are national commitments. So for now, the commitments, instead of being imposed as in some form of legal top-down treaty, are going to be national commitments. And so every country is required to come forward with a national commitment. And so then in terms of the international treaty, so we will have some form of international framework that those national commitments will sit within. And maybe that framework will entail some form of monitoring and review procedures and that kind of thing. But ultimately the commitment comes from the country itself.